Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. As you can tell from the title of this video, we're gonna be doing something a little bit different today. This time it's not a dupe palette we're gonna be comparing to an original one, but we are gonna be comparing two very famous and well-loved palettes to each other because I own them both and I never actually realized how similar they are until I was swatching one of them and I thought, hold on, this is so similar to the other one, and I ended up swatching them next to each other, and whilst every single shade is slightly different than the corresponding shade from the other palette, but overall I would say that the vibe you get from these palettes is extremely similar. The two palettes we're talking about today is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette and the Magic Mini palette by Juvia's Place. You get a lot of use out of these shades and the shades are absolutely beautiful. I really don't mean to butcher these names, but I'm just gonna mention a couple of my favorites quickly. I absolutely love Faso, which is a beautiful purple duochrome shade with a hint of, I would say, pink in it. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's a gorgeous shade. My other favorite is Vai, which is a silvery shade. I would say it's quite grey toned, but it does have a bit of dark blue in it. You can use it as part of a halo eye, a cut crease look. Absolutely beautiful. And possibly my all-time favorite from this palette is the shade called Yemoja, which is a very icy light blue shade. I don't think I even have to mention that all of the shimmery shades from Juvia's Place are absolutely stunning. They are so shiny, it's unbelievable. I can't exactly recall now, but I believe this was my second palette I purchased from Juvia's Place. The first one was the Nubian 2 palette, and when I purchased that one I could not believe the pigmentation I was getting out of those shades, so I basically knew immediately that I'm gonna be spending a lot of money buying eyeshadow palettes from this brand. And I did buy quite a few. Now I buy them from Beauty Bay because I live in the UK. I can't go on the Juvia's Place website, and I have noticed that Beauty Bay is quite behind with the new releases, so I haven't really been getting anything from them lately, but I do have quite a few of their palettes, and I will have a 1 palette 3 looks coming with all of the palettes I have very soon. I was originally planning on filming a video where I kind of rank them and I talk about which ones are my favorite and which ones I don't get that much use out of, but unfortunately, like I said, I'm not really up to date with the new releases and I'm not really sure if anyone would be interested in me ranking years old palettes anymore, so that's why I'm just gonna do a 1 palette 3 looks with each palette I have, and hopefully one day I will be able to pick up their newer palettes as well. Like I said, the other palette I have here today is the Riviera palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. I have done videos using this palette, I've done dupe reviews, and I've done a 1 palette 3 looks with this palette as well. Absolutely gorgeous. Now this palette is definitely a lot more tidy than the Juvia's Place one. In that one the shades are kind of all over the place. In this one, in each row you start with the lighter shade going towards the darker, and the top row is shimmery shades, the bottom row is matte shades except the first one, which is this white matte shade. This is again a really versatile palette. You will get a lot of different looks out of it, and because of that it really is one of my favorite palettes from Anastasia. So as you could probably already tell, they are both very colorful palettes and there are slight differences, so I am not by any means saying that they're identical palettes or even one trying to dupe the other, because that's not the case, but they are just so similar that I just don't think that you need both of them, and I'm gonna get into details of why I think that in a second. Before I would go through the shades that I believe are the most similar to each other, I'm gonna very quickly show you the swatches of these two palettes next to each other. The top row is the Juvia Place palette and the bottom row is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette. As you can see, the overall vibe of the palette is just so similar. Yes, the shades are slightly different, but I believe that you could create very similar looks using these two palettes, simply because the shades and the tones are just similar enough to give you a very similar outcome. I did not use the two palettes on my eyes today, but I actually did use a mixture of the two. It was mainly the Riviera palette though. In case you're interested, I used some of Nana, which is one of my favorite crease colors. And then I used Palm in my outer corner, Yacht all over my lid, and Sails in the inner corner. So back to the shades. Like I said, some of them are very similar to each other, to the point that you really wouldn't be able to tell once you wear them on your eyes that they are two different eyeshadow palettes, as long as you don't try to wear them side by side, but just using one at a time. So let me just show you some shades that are really similar to each other, starting with Yacht and from the Juvia Place palette Boronu. As you can see, the Juvia Place Boronu shade has slightly more red in it. The shade Yacht is a lot more of like a old gold shade. The Juvia Place one is definitely more reddish, more orangey. Another very similar pair, which might be surprising, at least it was to me, is Seychelles and Yara from the Juvia Place palette. Now I know that Yara is a lot more of a turquoise shade, it has more green in it, but overall I think they are very similar with Seychelles. I did swatch for you Palermo and a shade from the Juvia Place palette, which at first seems quite similar, and that shade is Zuba, but once you swatch them, Zuba is actually much lighter than it appears to be in the palette, and Palermo is much darker than it appears to be. So once you actually swatch them, they are quite different. So I definitely wouldn't say that they are identical by any means. I also tried to match Mediterranean with the shade from the Juvia Place palette. And that was the shade Vai, which, like I said, is one of my favorite shades from this palette. But Mediterranean has more purple and more blue in it. And as I said, Vai is more like a dark grey gunmetal type of color. It's very beautiful, but it has a lot less blue in it than Mediterranean does. And in the second row, I did try to match Coastline and Monte Carlo with shades from the Juvia Place palette, but whilst they were similar in darkness, they were completely different in shade. So I would say that the matte row of this palette is definitely different than the Juvia Place palette. Overall, I would say that these palettes are very similar, at least in my opinion. They are similar enough that you only need one of them. Now, they are not identical, so you will need to have a look and see which one do you prefer. Obviously, some people might have problem with the brand itself. Anastasia Beverly Hills and Juvia Place both had their issues in the past. I'm trying to keep this channel drama free, so I don't really want to go into details of the issues they had in the past, but I understand if someone doesn't want to support either of them. So obviously you need to look at the brand, you need to look at the price point. Like I previously said, I picked up the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette for £25, but that was a big discount on the palette. I believe the original price of this palette is around £46, which makes it about twice as expensive as the Juvia Place palette. I believe that the Juvia's Place palette was 20 or 30 pounds. All of their palettes are either 20 or 30 pounds, so it could be 30 just because of how many different shades you get in it, and it's a quite large palette. But even then, it is a lot cheaper than the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette, and overall you do get more in it. You get 16 shades in this one and 14 shades in the Anastasia Beverly Hills one. And I just think that the shimmery shades in the Juvia's Place palette perform a lot better than the shimmery shades in the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette. I do really love the matte shades as well in this palette. However, my only issue personally, obviously me being a quite fair-skinned girl, is that Nana is the only shade really that I can use in my crease from this palette. But as far as shimmery shades go, this palette is really bomb. Now obviously the Riviera palette is a lot more balanced. Like I said, more than half of the shades are matte in this palette, and they quite well work together. You don't get any greens in this palette. You don't really get a ton of dark shades. You really only can use palm to darken up the look. So most of the times when I'm using this palette, I actually reach for a different palette to darken up the outer corner, because not every look that I would like to create using this palette is going to work with this dark brown in my outer corner. So that is my issue with this palette. Overall, I would definitely say that you don't need both of them. So once again, just have a look at both of them. Consider the shades that they both give you, see which one you gravitate towards. Obviously consider the price point, the brand you're buying from, and I don't want to influence your decision. I think there are pros and cons to both of these eyeshadow palettes, but to answer the question that we asked at the beginning of this video, no, you don't need both of these palettes because they are similar enough to give you the same kind of eyeshadow looks. They are slightly different shades, but at the end of the day, your look is gonna be pretty much the same. That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know this was very different to what I normally do. I normally go into a lot of details about the eyeshadow palettes, when it was made, how much product you get, how much you pay, all of that. In today's video, I really just wanted to sit down, show you the shades in these two eyeshadow palettes, and tell you if you need both of these palettes or not, because honestly, if I knew how similar they were, I never would have picked up the Riviera palette, because I already had the Juvia's Place in my collection for a long time, and I never realized how similar these two are, just because the outlay of the two palettes are so different, and obviously the packaging is so different. I never would have guessed how similar they are. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you very soon. Bye.